An accused assassin wants a trial by jury. 58-year-old Vance Boelter pleaded not guilty in federal court last week. He is accused in the murder of former House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark. He is also charged with shooting Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette. A trial date hasn't been set yet, and there's still no word yet if there will be a death penalty in the case for sure. But this case is very complex, and that's why I have joining me right now Nicole Kettwick, who is an adjunct professor at the University of St. Thomas School of Law, also a managing partner with Brandt Kettwick Defense. We're so glad you're with us this morning because the word complex, and we're saying it kind of secondhand, but this is actually a complex case. Explain why.
So there's a statute or a U.S. code called the Speedy Trial Act, and that determines how long it takes for somebody to get to trial. Typically, it's 70 days after your first appearance or charges are brought. But under the Speedy Trial Act, there are certain exceptions that kind of pause the clock on those 70 days. And one of them is if a case is designated as complex. And that's what's happened in this case here. The government filed a motion seeking that the judge declare this a complex case, which is a legal term in this situation. And what that means is they've paused the time that counts towards that 70 days for a trial. And the days that were excluded from the 70 days were, I believe, July 15th through January 15th of 2026.
Okay, so complex is one word for this. Also, unique. What stands out to you about this case? You've been doing this for years. What is unique about it?
There are a lot of things that are unique about this case. Number one, the amount of evidence. The government in its motion indicated this was the largest manhunt in Minnesota history. There were, I believe, over a dozen different agencies that were involved in investigating this. And during the investigation, they're looking for ring camera from people's home. They have body camera, squad video. I mean, I don't know, but there's a lot of evidence. And that leads to hours and hours, hundreds of, it said even thousands of hours of video evidence, documents that they've gathered from subpoenaing different entities, and there's just a voluminous amount of discovery. And that's one reason this is a unique case, is there's just so much evidence.
And you know, this case was interesting too, because you know, we were covering it real time here because the manhunt, they were giving us, I feel, more information than we usually get because they were trying to catch someone. And some of the evidence was pretty public from the start. You know, the letter, the pictures. What do you think about that? Will that come into play, the fact that this is such a public case?
It can come into play in a number of different ways in terms of public opinion, in terms of what the outcome is, in terms of whether the death penalty is sought. There's a lot of different ways that can come into play.
And so jury selection, I'm sure that would be huge.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, speaking of the death penalty right here, you know, this is now conversation. It normally is not in Minnesota. So tell me about that.
So far, we don't know whether the death penalty will be sought. At some point, the judge may set out a schedule for when the government has to notify whether they will or will not seek the death penalty. Typically, that would happen after all of the discovery has been reviewed and motions are filed. So I don't expect we'll know when that will happen for several months, possibly into next year and later. Negotiations will happen, discovery or evidence will be reviewed before we know.
But it does seem to be a possibility.
It is a possibility, correct.
Okay. Well, I know you said different things stand out to you about this, and I wanted to know, since you work in the world of defense too, pleading not guilty, what is your thought on the reasoning behind that? Because we have all seen so much evidence.
That was very expected. At this point in the game, the defense hasn't even seen the evidence, much less reviewed it. So entering a plea of not guilty is very standard at this point in the proceeding.
Well, as we watch this case roll forward, what will you be looking for?
I think for a while we're not going to know a lot. October, I believe, is the deadline to exchange all of the evidence. I suspect in the meantime, the prosecutor and defense will be communicating, figuring out what evidence exists, and they may start some plea negotiations. Just don't really know. Well,
do you think this trial will be local, or will there be discussion of that changing?
It's too early to tell if they file a motion to change the venue. It certainly could be local. Minnesota's handled a lot of high-profile cases recently, so it could be held here.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your insight. We will keep watching it. As you said, this is just the beginning.
Right.
Could go for years.
Right.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nicole.